Okay, you can begin.
Okay. Hello, good day everyone. Today Brianna King and myself, Anastasia Sampert, will be presenting a chapter about understanding self. Chapter's overview. This chapter is about self-awareness as a foundation of effective leadership. It also explores the elements that shape your personal identity and drives your actions. It explores your self-concept and self-esteem, examines how you form your values and their roles in developing character, and addresses your personality preferences in decision making and learning. Ultimately, text, the stresses that understanding yourself is essential alongside studying leadership and principles. Have you ever been in this position? I have the solution to the problem, but I'm afraid to speak up in front of everyone. What if I sound stupid? Or here I am again, rushing to finish my paper the night before it's due, even though I've known about it for months. Why do I always procrastinate? I wish my professor would stop revising the syllabus. I like to know everything I need to do in the semester early so I can plan when to do work on assignment. Or I am proud that I didn't hesitate a minute to disagree when she made such a hurtful comment. Understanding self. Focused reflection is necessary to clearly see your own strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of others. This self awareness includes understanding how you prefer to think, learn, relate, and find meaning. Being able to articulate your beliefs and values help you understand your motivations and behaviors while knowing your strengths and weaknesses, foster authenticity and credibility in your relationship. Since leadership relies on interpersonal honest, authentic self-awareness, one that is open to growth and change is perhaps the most fundamental trait for effective leadership. Developing of self for leadership. Luke Skywalker initially sought external secrets and teachings from Master Yoda, but was instead guided on an inward journey. The key lesson was to focus and trust in his own internal power, the force, to achieve seemingly impossible feats, like moving mountains rather than depending on Master's explicit instructions or technique. The inward journey cultivates self awareness by identifying one's abilities, strengths, and weaknesses, which in turn develops self trust and authentic fundamentally understands the base of one's effectiveness. Development of self for leadership. That's the next slide. This encourages you to think about aspects of yourself, shape your personal identity, and fuel your motivation. It also explores the crucial role of self awareness in effective leadership, addresses key components like self awareness, like how you perceive yourself and your evaluation of your own worth. Examine the process of how you form your values and discuss your personality preference for how you approach decisions and address your preferences for how you learn. The common observation of many acknowledged leaders is that no one can teach you about yourself except you. By Bennett in 1989. Counselors, advisors, friends, and family can help you with this process, but awareness ultimately requires you to study yourself. Bennett observed four lessons in which to develop self knowledge. You are your own teachers. You should accept responsibility for your actions and blame no one. Believe and trust in yourself. You can learn anything you want to learn, and becoming a leader means to listen to yourself and learn from past experiences. Effective leadership is fundamentally rooted in self discovery and maximizing your personal strengths. While most people excel at setting and achieving individual goals through self control and internal motivation, they often struggle to apply the same drive when operating as part of a group, leading to the passive thought, it's not it's not my job, it's the leader's job. Overcoming this requires cultivating stronger self leadership skills, a willingness to take ownership and act without needing a formal title. The decision to pursue leadership growth demonstrates an understanding that true motivation is internal, not dependent on external factors like supervisors or circumstances. The essential challenge is not to look past any setbacks and actively determine what I can do to be effective and impact the things I care about. Strengths and weaknesses. We all bring a unique set of strengths and weaknesses in any situation, but there's a fascinating twist. Your biggest strength a li- can become a liability if you overuse it, and things you see as flaws might be viewed as assets by others. For example, being a strong critical thinker is great for spotting and logical errors in a plan. But if you immediately jump to criticism instead of listening to a new idea, it comes across as negative and blocking. Similar to being humble and quiet might mean your valuable options are often missed. Yet it also shows you're an keen and attentive listener. Ultimately, growing up your leadership self-awareness means learn to clearly identify your personal strengths and weaknesses and understand how you actually impact your ability to work with others to about changes. Talent is one of the greatest advantages. A critical part of knowing yourself is recognizing what you're naturally good at. However, we often fall into a trap. We are fixed on obsessing over our weaknesses. It states that trying to fix every flaw is a waste of precious time and energy. Given the limited time we have, it's far more effective for both leaders and for leadership and work to focus on developing our natural strengths rather than attempting an impossible task of transforming every weakness into a strength. We need to stop stress about flaws and start leading with what we do best. Effective leaders understand what they do best and consistently apply their strengths. But this doesn't mean ignoring weaknesses. Instead, you should simply be aware of the flaws you actively manage them to boost your productivity and fulfillment. A great strategy for this is to surround yourself with people whose talents complement yours, effectively using their strengths to cover your weaknesses. By managing your weaknesses instead of trying to completely fix them, you free up time to focus on what you naturally excel at. A philosophy built on two key ideas that everyone's talents are unique and that your greatest opportunity for growth lies within those areas of greatest strength. Too often we believe that our best strategy to grow and develop is to improve our weaknesses. Buckingham and Clifford define talent as your naturally reoccurring patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Leading from a philosophy of talents and strengths is an outgrowth of an emerging new field called positive psychology. This new field of psychology has moved away from the clinical diagnostic of all approach of looking at what is wrong with an individual and paying attention to what is right within each person. Leading from this framework will energize you and others in a positive way, open up more new possibilities, and allow you and others to do what you are best at. Here's a simple yet powerful metaphor you can use to guide your daily actions and interaction. It's called the Don's theory of the dip and the bucket. This concept is used when where everyone has an invisible emotional bucket. The statement of the bucket dictates how you feel. A full bucket leads to a feeling of positivity and well-being, while an empty bucket bring, brings on negativity and feeling let down. We all possess an invisible dipper, which is a tool we use for leadership and interaction. You fill someone's bucket by focusing on their strengths, offering praise, and saying positive things, which in turn enhances your self esteem. With this, you can also dip from their bucket with negative actions and or words, making them feel diminished. Ultimately, this practice is about using your dipper to fill your own bucket and the buckets of others, a process that validates everyone's talents and strengths. Think about the great feeling you get when you are recognized for doing something well, something you're naturally good at and enjoy. The recognition or have of or having your bucket filled acts as a powerful motivator. Research confirms when you have experienced greater meaning and satisfaction in your work, which is directly boost which directly boosts your productivity. Essentially, by leading with what you do best, you keep your own emotional bucket consistently full. Instead of trying to eliminate your weaknesses, a better approach is to manage them so they don't get in the way of your true strength. While weaknesses cannot usually turn into strengths, the goal is to control them enough to free up our powerful talents to develop fully. By doing this, our strengths can become a dominant that the weaknesses effectively become irrelevant, allowing us to succeed based on what we do best. Self esteem and confidence. It comes down to this. Self belief is the true fuel of motivation, not just knowledge, as Martin Luther King suggested. The way we see ourselves breaks down into three parts: self concept, your objective description; self esteem, your subjective feeling about that description; and self confidence, your reliable knowledge that you can use your skill. Ultimately, you need self acceptance. This means working to improve what you can and use reasonable reframing, changing your productivity perspective of to see your fixed traits like being shy as assets like being thoughtful. Understanding yourself. Understanding oneself requires a deeper look into nature versus nurture debate. One must see their views, morals, personalities, and mainly the cause of genes gained to parents and family members, as well as environmental effects. While you cannot modify your genes, you have the power to adopt skills and behaviors from your environment intentionally. This is a psychology, psych- sociological study of human individuality. Sorry. It helps to one attain personal insights and it helps you study emotions of humanity and helps you to understand the true perspective of being human. Now I will hand you over to my partner, Brianna Ting. Oh,
Character and
sorry, we still on we have to go back to the factor and that shapes your identity. Sorry about that. Factor that shapes your identity. Your identity and potential as a leader are shaped by a collision of salient personal characteristics that, that have defined your thoughts of life. You need to consider how factors like ethnicity, radical and cultural background, your gender and sexual orientation, your age, and your ability or disabilities influence your beliefs and behavior. Further key influences include your birth order, the significant role and responsibilities you hold, like being a parent or volunteer, and your personal sense of spiritual religion. Finally, your family socioeconomic status had also mold your development and perspective on leaders. Mapping these diverse elements from being male or female, old or young, to your religious affiliations is essential for developing self-awareness. Understanding your understanding your own motivation and the context of others, you achieve the leader within you, giving you the capacity to make meaningful differences, whether you take a formal role or act as an active participant. Values, beliefs, ethics, and character. It challenge, it's challenging enough to understand how factors like gender, ethnicity, or religion shapes your behavior, but it's even harder to more crucial to pin down the values and beliefs that truly drives your ethnic and define your character. If your actions are and thoughts feel like a mystery, it often means that you haven't really examined your own value system. Hence, beliefs create values, and values direct your thoughts and actions. Being able to articulate your value is key to living by guiding principles. The critical question remains, whose value are we using and why? While some, like promise keeping and nonviolence, are universal norms, understanding values are essential for understanding others and working together towards a common purpose. Now I will hand you over to my partner, Brianna Finn.
Character and ethical behavior. Maintaining integrity in relationships is essential when working towards change. Terry 1993 defines authenticity as actions that are, quote, both true and real in ourselves and in the world, end quote. Integrity. Integrity is more than a good attribute. It is the foundation upon which trusted relationships are built. When you conduct yourself with integrity, your words and actions are consistent, making you a trustworthy and dependable person in the perspective of others. Whether we call it integrity, authenticity, or credibility, it all comes down to your true character. This is what helps you truly connect with others and build a strong sense of community as you work towards a shared goal. Real change occurs when people of strong character work together, with honesty, selflessness, and a shared commitment to doing the right thing. So here we have an example of good character. So let's say there's a community organizer who learns about residents' concerns in the area about a new park project, and the community organizer honestly communicates the project's benefits and limitations to both the residents and the construction team, rather than distorting information or leaving any details out in order to achieve a quick win. This is an example of maintaining integrity while working towards change. By being truthful and respectful, the organizer builds trust with everyone, allowing them to work efficiently together on a solution that actually satisfies the people's concerns while still moving the project ahead. Retired General Norman Schwarzkopf, who led the United States Army during Desert Storm, was once asked what leadership qualities he looked for in leaders, and in response he stated, quote, "Probably far more important to me than competence was character, integrity, ethics, and morality. I looked for people who were willing to serve a cause and were what I would call selfless leaders rather than self-serving leaders." End quote. So he's essentially saying that a person's character, particularly their integrity, ethics, and morals, was more essential than their ability to perform tasks. He desired leaders who had a greater purpose and cared more about others than themselves. Aaron Fogelman, a volunteer leader of Young Life, president of Quest, and a tutor at the University Writing and Communication Center, who also studies English at East Tennessee State University, once made a powerful statement about trust. Quote, "Trust has been crucial in my relationships with others. If I don't think I can trust someone, then I won't pursue a relationship with the person. I think trust has to be earned through consistency and honesty. In building relationships with others, I try to never lie and always be there for the person. Being faithful to a person breaks down barriers and builds trust. Being trustworthy also makes others feel like you are someone they can follow. Without trust, I don't think a meaningful relationship is possible." End quote. She's expressing that trust is essential for meaningful relationships. She only pursues relationships with people she can trust, and she feels that trust must be earned through honesty and consistency. By being reliable and truthful, she aims to build trust and break down barriers, emphasizing that trustworthiness also inspires others to follow. Without trust, Fogelman believes relationships can't be meaningful. The Josephson Institute of Ethics developed a concept known as the 6 pillars of character. These pillars are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. They represent core ethical values that help guide good behavior. And now we'll go into more detail about each of the pillars. So firstly, being worthy of trust means being honest, demonstrating integrity, keeping promises, and being loyal. Respect means that you treat others with dignity, regardless of if you admire or agree with all their views or behaviors. Being respectful is a dedication to treating others in ways that do not make them feel belittled. Responsibility means accepting accountability for your own actions and persevering. Fairness is working towards an equitable outcome. Being fair means being open-minded and willing to listen and confronting your own biases that might influence your decisions. Caring means being concerned for others and their well-being. Care requires empathy and kindness. And citizenship is the civic virtue of knowing that as a member of a community, you have responsibilities to do your part to contribute to the well-being of the group. Citizenship means you are willing to abide by laws and societal obligations. So here we have an excerpt from the book, which is an example of someone who possesses all the characteristics of the 6 pillars of character. After a concert on campus one Friday night, Two students were counting the ticket sales receipts. The money in the cash drawer was $120 short for the number of tickets sold. Baffled at the difference, the students turned in the accounts the next day and presented the problem to the Student Activities Office. That afternoon, a third student came into the office carrying an envelope containing $120. The money had apparently come in during a ticket sales rush and had been set aside instead of being locked in the cash drawer. The office accountant clerk asked her, "Why didn't you just keep the money? No one would have known." The student's quick, indignant reply was, "But I would have known, and I don't do things like that." Despite having the opportunity to keep the money without immediate consequence, the student chose to do the right thing and return it. This shows a commitment to ethical behavior, even when no one is watching. The student values the trust of the community and understands the importance of preserving that trust. Instead of ignoring the issue or delaying, the student took proactive steps to correct a mistake that wasn't even hers. It shows how responsible she is. This level of ownership reflects emotional intelligence and maturity. It may seem easier to just stay quiet, especially if no one suspects wrongdoing. Doing the honest thing in that moment takes a certain bravery. In short, this story suggests the student is trustworthy and a person of high character, someone who can be counted on to do the right thing. Another brief example is in the news was when a student volunteer who was helping with the cleanup after Hurricane Katrina found $30,000 in cash in a vacated house and turned the money in to the authorities. Leadership requires a special kind of dedication, a special kind of belief. I think that you must have defined for yourself a set of moral and ethical values in which you choose to make your decisions in life as you move along. Then you must be true to yourself. Schwarzkopf, as cited in REN 1994. Understanding how your values influence your decisions and interactions helps you better understand yourself and how others see you. Even if you view yourself as fair and caring, others might see you differently, like rigid or judgmental. Knowing your personality preferences can explain these differences and support more effective engagement with diverse groups. In short, knowing how your internal values manifest externally and recognizing how that may be perceived by others is key to both personal growth and meaningful engagement with diverse communities. Personality preferences determine how people adapt to the world around them. For example, how you make decisions, relate to others, and how you cope with challenges. Personality studies are extensively covered in psychology courses, books, and journals, and we'll expand on that some more in the next slide. A psychologist by the name of Carl Jung identified four main functions of human adaptation that he called personality archetypes or temperament archetypes. These four functions include how we relate to the world, perceive the world, make judgments, and make decisions. Jung's analysis includes four pairs of adaptive orientations that are completely opposed to each other. These combinations describe where we get our energy, extrovert or introvert, how we gather information from the world around us, sensing or intuiting, how we prefer to process that information, feeling or thinking, and how we prefer to make decisions, judging or perceiving. Now we'll delve into the different archetypes previously mentioned. So the first archetype is concerned with how we relate to the world. There are differences between those who are oriented to the outer world, known as extroverts, and those who prefer their own inner world, introverts. So extroverts do their best thinking out loud and in dialogue with others. They get their energy from being around people, and they are sociable, while introverts are more oriented to their inner world of feelings and ideas. They prefer to think things through before forming or stating their opinions. They gain energy by creating private space, even when in a crowd. Given the same 20-minute break, an introvert might write an entry in his journal or pull out the file on his upcoming meeting and review what will be covered. The use of these words is something confusing because extrovert does not mean outgoing and introvert does not mean shy and withdrawn. The terms refer instead to a preferred orientation to the outer or inner world. The second archetype covers your preferences for perceiving the world around you, sensing or intuiting. Sensing people rely on the five senses and prefer concrete details. They are very practical and realistic, preferring the present or past to the abstractions of the future. Intuiting people prefer a holistic view of situations. They are creative and imaginative, and they like projecting into the future and anticipating ways to improve and change. Sensing people might say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, whereas intuitors might say, there has to be a better way. Macaulay, 1990. The differences in these two preferences are the source of great misunderstandings, and this quote places the wildest gulf between people. End quote. Kiersey and Bates, 1984. You may hear this gulf being expressed in a discussion when one person says, wait a minute, we need more information before we decide, or what do the rules in the student handbook say? The other person then might say, we cannot know everything and we are close enough to have an idea of what might work. Let's just give it a try and see what happens. Groups need both kinds of people, those grounded in reality and those who think of possibilities. The third archetype has to do with judging, thinking, and feeling. Thinkers are people who prefer thinking and using logic and rationality. Thinking encourages critical thinking, analysis, and reliance on objective scientific methods. Feeling individuals prioritize judgments that consider relationships, values, and beliefs. Individuals who prefer feeling may perceive those who prefer thinking as cold and objective, while those who prefer thinking may view people who prefer feeling as overly emotional and unable to make firm decisions. This scale exhibits a gender trend, with males making up 60% of the T preference group and women making up 60% of the F preference group. The fourth archetype involves decision making by either judging or perceiving. Individuals with judging preferences prioritize resolving conflicts and making decisions to maintain order, and they value closure and want unambiguous beginnings, deadlines, and endings. Perceiving type individuals like open ended situations, acquiring as much information as possible while being flexible. They excel at dealing with ambiguity, preferring to go with the flow and leave things open ended. We can and do use all eight of these processes, but generally prefer a consistent pattern. If you are right handed, you could write with your left hand if you had to. but you prefer your right hand. If you are an introvert, you can and do enjoy people and good conversation, but you must have time and space to think and reflect to do your best work. If you are an extrovert, you certainly can listen and reflect, but you prefer the energy of interacting with others to build and refine your ideas because you like to think out loud. Understanding the impact of our preferences and comfortably using our non preferred strategies is a skill to acquire. We have each formed preferences for how we perceive and judge our surroundings. Myers 1980 suggests that these pairs, along with the 16 primary personality types, aid in self and other awareness. Your four-letter composite profile consists of E or I, S or N, T or F, and J or P. These all stand for extroversion versus introversion, sensing versus intuition, thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. That brings us to the topic of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. One of the most well-known methods of assessing Carl Jung's personality types is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. The MBTI helps us understand relationships in a leadership context. According to MBTI research, extroverts account for 65 to 75% of the overall population, with women having a somewhat higher predilection. Introverts prevail in disciplines of study such as science and occupations such as university teaching. Sensing preferences are 3 times more common than intuitive preferences. People who are more intuitive are most likely to be educators, consultants, and student leaders. Two-thirds of men typically prefer thinking, whereas two-thirds of women prefer feeling. Female graduate students, engineering students, and business leaders tend to prefer thinking-based techniques. Men in arts, counseling, and some health sectors tend to have strong preferences for feeling. About 55% of people in the general community are judging types, but research on leaders show that this number can reach 91%, demonstrating the propensity of positioned leaders to find closure and obtain judgments. Although leaders come from a wide range of preference groups, it is evident that some professions or fields may have particular patterns of preferences that are as advantages. From the type perspective, one would not ask what type is the best leader. Instead, the question would be, how does each type demonstrate leadership? Macaulay, 1990. The psychological type theory is commonly used in leadership assessments to assess self-awareness, relationships, and leadership processes. However, it has its limitations. Research suggests that type might alter throughout time. For example, an action-oriented extrovert may mature into a contemplative and reflective introvert. Being made aware of your personality preferences encourages you to experience self-awareness. As your awareness grows, you develop a demand to build other skills and to have an array of different responses in decision making and in your relationships with others. A helpful use arises when you discover that your argument with another is the result of a mismatch in preferences, which can lead to more understanding methods of interacting. Leadership is focusing on achieving goals or bringing about change. Individuals' understanding of the need for change and their ability to adapt to change is a learning process. Humans continuously adapt to new conditions, whether imposed or created. The types that were discussed as personality preferences in the previous section may have learning applications. The combinations of your four codes E/I, S/N, T/F, and P/G would get more complex if you use the MBTI. For instance, extroverted learning involves group tasks, projects, and discussions, as extroverts process information better by talking and brainstorming with others. Introverted learning entails actively listening and engaging in mental conversations with yourself. Introverts may choose to keep a journal and are likely to perform well on written projects when they have time to reflect. Sensing learners focus on details and facts. The history and background of an issue is important to sensing learners, as it helps them to establish a better context of the issue. Intuitive learners tend to focus on the overall picture rather than minor details. They may be prone to drawing conclusions based on incomplete facts. They value open mindedness and seek information from various sources. Sensing or intuition preferences may be associated with a preference for deductive or inductive learning thinking. Being deductive means that you prefer to look at the big picture and know what the end result is going to be or what the whole is before delving into the parts and pieces. If you are inductive, you prefer to build up to the larger picture or conclusion by putting all the pieces together and evolving your conclusion. A deductive learner might be frustrated with an inductive learner and say, "Where in the world are you going with this argument? Can you just get to your point?" Understanding the difference in approach, that same deductive learner might say, "It would help me to know where this is going so I can fit your examples into the bigger picture." Think of the classes or organizations you know that are made up of one predominant type. Often a major will attract students who are more similar than different. If, however, you are mismatched in learning style, you may wonder why the group does not readily see the benefit of your suggestions or perhaps even rejects a process you propose. Groups that may be composed of one predominant type of learning preference will find strength in including other approaches to enrich the outcome. Highly diverse groups of learners need to acknowledge that people learn differently and offer options and choices that will appeal to the diversity within a group. For example, student government organizers who are planning a retreat during which goals and plans for the year are to be set might send out materials ahead of time, appealing to the introverts and intuitors, plan large group presentations, appealing to the introverts and thinkers, plan small group discussions, useful for the extroverts and feelers, plan case studies, plan case study applications. Also, they might work through how a possible goal might be put into an action plan with a related budget, useful to the censors and judges. If only one approach were used, it would relate less well to the entire group. It is clearly helpful to know your own preferred learning style and understand how others may prefer to learn differently. Moreover, our preferences in how we take in information, relate to others, make decisions, and learn are all important areas in relational leadership. In this chapter, we focused on the necessity of self awareness when attempting to understand oneself. assessing your skills and limitations in order to improve your talents and self concept, the common values in a person of good character, and models to measure personality and learning preferences. To better understand yourself, some activities you can do are: think about your gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, special abilities or disabilities, age, socioeconomic status, religion, birth order, and any other possible influences that come to mind. How have these factors influenced your personality and learning preferences? Write your own personal mission statement. What is your purpose in life? What values are important to you? What do you want to be? What attributes and capabilities are important to you? Review Bennis's lessons for developing self-knowledge and provide examples from your own life. When were you your own best teacher? When did you accept responsibility for something that did not go well? When did you learn something you really wanted to learn? And when did you learn something through the process of reflection? Identify two of your top talents. Write in your journal about how those talents help you in leadership situations. How do you apply these talents in your leadership? To learn more about the talent philosophy, go to the Gallup organization's website about Strengths Quest and click on the student box to learn more about the Strengths Quest web-based assessment and to view a demonstration of it. You can also read more about leading with your strengths at this site. Contact your college counseling center to complete the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. That will help you understand your personality preferences. Many people use positive affirmations to enhance their self-esteem. Although these will not make up for a lack of skill or ability, they can help you develop your confidence. An example might be: I am going to do a good job speaking in front of this group. Saying this phrase over and over to yourself up to 20 times throughout the day can help you believe in yourself. Develop 2 or 3 affirmations that you can use to strengthen your self confidence. Another technique is creative visualization. Again, this will not make up for a lack of skill or ability, but it can help you develop your confidence. Identify something you have to do in the next couple of days that is causing you to worry. Now visualize yourself accomplishing this activity successfully. Repeat this visualization whenever you begin to worry about the upcoming event. After the event is over, consider whether or not using visualization helped you. And lastly, using the dipper and bucket metaphor mentioned in the presentation. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you all for your time and attention.